Okay. Hey, Brian.
Hello.
Uh,
Forgive the hat and the casual appearance.
oh,
I'm
whatever.
yeah, it's just been one of those days. So
Well, you look relaxed and ready to have a coaching session. Maybe not.
it looks can be deceiving, but
You're
I'm ready for
manifesting it with your outward appearance, okay?
yes. Yes.
Well, as always, before we dive in, anything top of mind, 911s that's like distracting you, big on the list?
No. I mean, it's just a wacky day, but nothing out of the ordinary, just a lot of moving pieces with kids all in needing to be in different places and Olivia's car not back in repair. So yeah, it's just been a frazzled day, but nothing too outlandish.
Okay. Yeah. It's the day in the life of a parent in summer.
Yes, that is it. It's a great way to describe it. A lot of
Um,
blessings, but a lot of disruptions when they're
that's
all
right.
here at once.
That's right. Well, I do want to pray for us before we start, but also, have you ever done any breath work to do focus or anything like that before?
I have not a lot. Seth took me through some of that on a retreat, and I mean I enjoyed it. You know,
Yeah.
it's one of the things where I'm sure it's great, and like many things, it's like if I would do it, it would give me time back. It feels like I don't have the time to breathe. How crazy is that? Um,
Um, alert, alert, this is a problem.
but no, I enjoyed it. I don't, yeah, it may be a little different than what you're speaking of, but would love to. Yeah, I'm open to any advice on that.
Well, I was just thinking, like you, I'm kind of coming in on two wheels. So I'm a person too, right? Just because I'm the coach doesn't mean I'm not like running crazy. And so I was thinking before I prayed, there's a thing that's called different things, but it's just box breath. And even as I'm looking at the screen, like you and I are both in a box, right? So it's like this, you breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, and then exhale, 2, 3, 4. So I was thinking, what if we did that twice? And then I just prayed for us and then we started.
That is great.
Okay, and I'll guide us. So you can just close your eyes and maybe like hunch your shoulders and then relax them down a couple times just to like, let them all that tension go. And if you're make sure you're in a comfortable position and that your feet are either maybe planted on the ground or just that you feel grounded in some way. I know you love the beach, so maybe picture you're sitting on the beach, hear the waves crashing, and we'll take a couple breaths and we're just going to start with breathing in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, and then let it go. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're gonna do that again. And this time when you let it go, really let it go. It's just you and I. So just even sometimes I'll just be like a mouth exhale, like just like a big sigh. So let's go in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, exhale, let it go, 2, 3, 4. And let me pray. Lord Jesus, just thank you for Brian and this carved out time to spend together. Really just seeking you and your purpose for his life. What intentions he needs to be mindful of, that you're calling him to, so that he can purpose the gifts of time and his skills, his mind and body and spirit and heart for all the things that you desire to do in and through him. Lord, as we come into this space today, just to coach and talk through those different areas of life, would you just shore up Brian's mind and heart so that it is centered on encouragement and the value of him being a child of yours, Lord, not allowing any foothold for the enemy to creep in as we talk about things that are maybe less than where we want them to be or less ideal, but just that he would feel full of hope. Lord, let your spirit guide us in our conversation, and just pray that for the distractions to just kind of with the waves that we picture, just to ebb and flow out of us as we talk, and so that we can focus and give good attention to this time that you have created for us. Lord, we thank you for who you are. We thank you for loving us. We love you, Lord, and we ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
How'd that breathing feel?
It's good. I was thinking when you were praying, it reminds me of that, I forget the artist, but it's called Just Breathe, I think.
Oh, I
And
love that song.
I love that song. I haven't listened to that in a while, but yeah.
That is my daughter's anti-anxiety song. Like, I send that to Emily whenever she's anxious, and we just kind of have used it as our prayer for each other. So I love it. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I like that. Yeah, what Seth had walked me through was it's a lot more, it's lengthier. It's maybe like a 10-minute deal. And I'd read some stuff how I guess the Navy SEALs, have a similar to what you did, that's they're in a lot of pressure situations and use breathing. So I'll put that in my notes. That's very helpful.
Well, I'm learning about it too. And, even as we're here in a session together, it's like, I want to be present. And I think that mindfulness it's a coined term in our day and age, but I also think that there's something to it, especially as we walk with the Lord, to be mindful of the spirit and not be distracted by the things of the world. Like, there's scriptural things that point us to being mindful, and how it's really good for our brains too. And not to have to multitask and task switch. We'll make better choices and be less tired. So it's always, it's something that I'm toying with too and learning, but I find it helps in these moments to kind of be like, okay, it's like a good bookend to whatever was going on, and it brings us into this, right? So anyway.
I like that.
Well, last time we met, we talked through one aspect of your wheel of life, but also you were preparing for your pastoral review. And I know you sent me notes over, and also you completed the balance wheel. So tell me about how that went, how that felt on Monday.
Yeah, really so encouraging. Just in general, before the tool, I can explain more about that, but yeah, we just have great elders who are very intentional. It was very encouraging. We walked through the balance wheel as the tool, but more than anything, it was like they just said, we want to just encourage you, speak life into you, see what your needs are. This is less of a performance thing and more of just a check-in. And they invited Erin into that and checked in on her, and we did that together, which I thought was really good. I appreciate just having her involved, just one from accountability. I just think sometimes it's easy to hide what's going on in the home, or she could be struggling. They would never know if I was, crafty and trying to hide something. So I love that she's involved. And just that we walk through so much together and try to do ministry together. So, and then as far as the tool itself, yeah, I mean, in one vein, I don't love, or at times I struggle with tools like that. I shouldn't say I don't love them. I struggle with tools like that because I was just telling Aaron, it's like I could convince myself that this is an 8 or a 2 or a 5. Like I could really reason any of those scores. So I was trying to be very balanced or I was trying to be very fair in those answers, and included her in it to go through it together. Like, do you see, I might think this is a 7, do you, or whatever. So I think having her do that with me, because, just anytime somebody's like, rate something 1 to 10, I'm like, I don't know. It's either 3 or 7 or 5. It's just,
I'm the same way. I get that. Yeah.
but it's a good tool because no matter necessarily what I think what it captured was, here are the sections that are more impaired. Here are the ones that are more thriving, no matter what the number is. And so it just allows me to pause and look into my life.
Hmm.
And I wrote up, this was good for me instead of just turning in that wheel. And we were going to talk through it, but I wrote a summary of just why I arrived at that number and just some goals, some next steps in those. So yeah, I mean, I don't, sadly, I've not really ever had a performance review or any type of review. Had a couple that were very low level. So yeah, it's kind of the first time I've gone through one of those processes, and so it was good. I mean, I'm glad we did it, and it was encouraging. So I just gave you a long answer to that, but yeah, it was
No, I love it.
overall positive. So
I'm so glad. And I really do appreciate the notes that you provided too, because I mean, it's, I joked with you earlier before we met today that you're my gold star student, but you did such a good job in really investing in the process with the elders. And obviously we're talking about it too, that it just, you've already considered why and also what some goals around it were. So it's helpful in that, in the conversation too. And I'm glad it was encouraging. I think so oftentimes we go into those and we don't know what to expect if people are going to give us feedback that's hard, which I know you want to have that too. And I mentioned to you, I think last time, we can do that together too. We can do a 360 review. If you want to get kind of more of a performance review feel at some point, we can do that. So whatever's helpful to you, of course.
yeah, I mean, I think, and they gave some feedback on performance, but it was, they're like, we're gonna give you some of this, but this is not, 80% of this intent is to just hit pause, see where you're at, see if you're healthy. We know you came into this feeling pretty unhealthy. We're a year and a half in, and so how are you doing? And
Mhm.
so it wasn't. I mean, yeah, they gave a little bit of feedback on, things that could improve or we could change or whatever. But it was, yeah, 80-90% of it was more just them using that to really dig under the hood a little bit.
So we have our session time today, and we can go in different directions. We can either spend time unpacking some of their feedback. We can talk through a different area that you've done on the wheel, or we can even talk about something else that's come up in the process, something completely different. So what would you like to spend the time doing today?
I mean, there wasn't a lot of feedback. I don't know that we need, I mean, I don't know that we need to concentrate most of our time on that. I could briefly tell you what that was. It might lead to more questions, or there may be more content there than I think. Hold on, let me pull up my notes on that.
Okay, and I'm in the same note with you, I guess, right? Mhm.
Say that again.
I said I'm in the same note with you. I can see your cursor, so we're together on the Google Doc.
Yeah, I think I wrote some of my notes from that review
Okay,
in a,
different place.
yeah, let me see.
Okay.
Uh, yeah. Just because I thought I might want to write some things that, since that was a shared document with them, that, um, yeah, if I wanted to star something or whatever.
Yeah.
Let me, I don't know if it's gonna, I don't know why it's not, it's grayed out. I was gonna say, let me share this with you. Um, yeah, it's not letting me share. Well, I can go through it with you verbally. But yeah, why don't we just start there? And
Okay.
um, I think in general, the feedback was, one, we care deeply about you and Aaron. Um, we're encouraged by your leadership to step out in faith, to lead Wellspring. We wanted a church that looked like the former student ministry, and they named some characteristics of that, of care for people, shepherding, kind of how, I guess, my personality gathers people cares for them, kind of pursues the Lord together. So anyway, they were very affirming in that. They used First Thessalonians 5:11 about just diligently laboring among you, and they just said, I felt like that verse fits you well, that you've been very diligent this year to labor among us, and just said you're a pastor who shepherds, and that's not always the case, which is crazy because it's the same word. So
I know.
nothing different than a pastor and an elder, or a shepherd or elder. They're all the three the same. But it was like, we really appreciate that you are with the people. And then they just mentioned that youth camp was really special. Thanks for leading that. That's kind of outside of my job description. So there have been some growth in the preaching aspect, which coming into it was like something I've not done a lot. Don't seem to have, one, not a lot of experience. And two, it just doesn't necessarily bring me a lot of life. Like I would never choose to preach a lot. And I told them I've learned to embrace it, and I've loved it more than I've learned to love it more and more. I mean, some of that's insecurity of like, I just don't like being up front. I don't like being in front of people. Maybe some of that's based on pride, a false humility of it, where maybe I'm thinking people were looking at me, and that's based in pride. So, but I don't, that's just something that I struggle to communicate clearly with the way my brain works. I think I've always told people, like, I think in popcorn, and these ideas are everywhere. So to get them in a line is very difficult. It takes a lot of energy for me to have a very linear communication, which there's good and bad to that. I think, some would love a very linear sermon, and then some would say that's really boring. So I'm, like a McCurry personality prefers the linear, where like maybe a Silas who's an artist likes the popcorn or the more artistic approach. So, it just depends on personality. But I think that there's been some growth there. They felt like, and were encouraging in that way. And then, I just told them, like, I've really learned to love shepherding the body in that way from the pulpit, and to be amongst the body and to ask the Lord, what do you want to say to these people? And me being one of those people. Like, it's not like, what do you want to say to all these minions under me? Like that. So it's like, I'm part of these people. What do you want to say? I'm the conduit, and others different weeks. But so I've enjoyed that. I really enjoy the sermon prep. I don't enjoy writing a sermon. I think I just have a lot, which I'd love to unpack. I think I have a lot of trouble staying still for 3 hours, 4 hours of a block of time to just plow through the typing of it. So I'm thinking about it a lot. Like today, I didn't type a lot on my sermon, but like I thought about it, in my head for, 3 to 4 hours as I'm doing other things. So I've noticed that I do better sermon prep when I'm active with my hands, and that all goes well. The problem becomes when I sit down to actually have to type it out. And that's discipline that I get easily distracted. I can't go anywhere to do it. I have to be at home, and there has to be peace in my home. So that's just some little minor things. And let's see. They had some sweet words. One of them said that they felt like that we have sacrificed, Aaron and I have sacrificed in starting the church to provide shalom for many others. And I just thought that was really sweet. I never thought about that. I mean, that's my heart, but I've just never had words for that. And then a couple areas of growth or support would be really holding to weekly, 1 day, partial day Sabbath. I just told them, like, I'm not, a lot of weeks I'm working on Fridays, sometimes even Saturdays, and that's not sustainable. And just trying to pinpoint some of that are disruptions that happen, and just can't be avoided. Some of that's personal world stuff that would come into play. The school year's a little easier for that, when the kids are out of school, but I'm getting to be more efficient. So the spring semester was better than the fall. The fall, like I struggled, like every week that I preached, I was working a 6-day week for the most part. I mean, pockets here or there that I would take a break or a breather, but it just felt like what would take a normal person maybe 10, 15 hours to sermon prep, it was taking me like 30, which is way too much. But so that was one. They just encouraged me on that. We've identified, what some of those pressure points are and that happening. And it's gotten better. And then the other was just to pursue support in preaching, whether it's a coach or seminary or some type of class. And I would say that too. That was not out of left field. That would have been one of my. So the two that they listed in the third for me would be that they didn't mention would just be delegation. I'm not very good at delegating, which probably impacts that first one of not Sabbathing well. And I'm highly idealistic. So sometimes I could delegate to someone else. It's easier to do it myself, or maybe I'm particular, want it done a certain way instead of just releasing that and trusting. And so some of it's a control idol. There's some pieces there. So, but overall that was their feedback. And I felt like that was in line and encouraging. So.
Yeah. So it sounds like, I mean, it's stuff that I think one of the things I just want to commend you is that you're so self-aware, and genuinely humble in such a way that, I mean, the feedback already matches up what you felt like was true, it sounds like, of yourself and areas, and maybe even you would go further and say a couple things else that you, not even in a hypercritical mode about yourself, but just that you're aware of. So I think that's great. And I'm glad that it was an overall encouraging time too. That's just something you need as a pastor and a senior leader. We often don't see that those types of leaders get a lot of encouragement and thanks. And so it's just a sweet thing to have that from the team that you're leading, very directly. So I'm glad.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. So, in that, some of the things that I heard, you've mentioned several different kinds of goals. I heard, sabbatical in there. I heard some preaching training, and I heard that thing that we talked about before, the idealistic delegation. So those are options of places we could go in the next pieces of the session, or we could focus on a specific area again. What would feel most helpful to you?
Last week we talked, well, let's touch base on the sabbatical piece because that's part of my homework. Okay. Ties in enough, and I want to report on that. So I think last time we met, I think this was you and I that talked through a good bit of some of what the disconnect in me resting well, Sabbathing well, kind of have these yearly option or yearly things that are available, family vacation, go on a backpacking trip, like those are the yearly rhythm is a good rhythm for me. Although I would add that one of the yearly rhythms that's not good is Erin and I getting away, which some of that's her job, the seasonal life of the kids, and then mine, just the way our life doesn't overlap real well. We have to work extra hard to get away. So, so that's one that needs to have some help in the yearly, but it's more of the monthly and the weekly. And you had asked me to put together some of that. So let me pull that up. So you asked me to come up with 4 or 5 locations that are around here that I could pursue. And so part of my review was, one of the goals was to figure out a yearly rhythm with Erin, and then more of a bi-weekly rhythm with Erin and I. Because just one trip away doesn't just solve a year worth of not connecting or getting into each other's world. So So that was a big piece I, want to grow. And as far as personally, like a weekly or bi-weekly, just getting out in nature, getting away from the city. So I just, one thing, here's my list. So one would be Shelby Farms, exploring, maybe renting a kayak there, I've thought about purchasing one for a while, just to give me some freedom to get out on the water. I really enjoy that, whether it's at Shelby Farms or somewhere else, a lake or whatever. So, one step would be to go there, rent one, maybe once or twice, see if that's something I would enjoy enough to invest in, to own one and use it. The other one would be, Collierville Square is a place I just really like. I mean, if it's blazing hot outside, that's not the best option, but I would enjoy that more than just sitting at a restaurant or coffee shop in town. Horseshoe Lake, we've got maybe an option there. It's a little further drive, but could go out for a day to a friend's house. Wolf River, which kind of plays into the whole kayaking thing. And then Nana's Pool, which just opened. So that might be a place I could just, if I needed something quick, like I just, for an hour or two and just get outside. The weather's nice, but I don't want to drive, an hour or something. So those are some brainstorms. In this, one thing that comes up that I've voiced to Aaron before, it's kind of a catch-22. I love being outside. I love being alone in nature. I really connect with the Lord. And then I also have this fear of being alone. Just out of a safety thing. Like I would love, it would bring me so much excitement tomorrow to get in a kayak and go down the Wolf River. And I think that's totally unwise. So, so to find a way, I don't know. And I think that comes back to one time I was fishing alone. Erin and I were on this retreat. She was back at the cabin. So, it was probably a 30-minute walk to where she was. And I was in a metal boat, and I slipped and I caught myself, but I came close to hitting my head. And I thought, if I'd hit my head, who knows what could happen. So I don't think that's an unrealistic fear. I think it's probably wise in this season of life and responsibilities and family to just think about, it's one thing to go sit at Collierville Town Square. That's pretty safe, but to get out on a river in a kayak probably needs to be in plurality with somebody. So just thinking through that as a barrier as well, that I don't know what that looks like. So I just want to bring that up. But that's my homework. That's my list.
Gold star again. So when I love the pieces that I heard. So annual getaway with Aaron. That monthly or maybe more weekly, place to go try to sit in, and even a more routinely connection point with Aaron. I think when you tie back to that idealism that you have, because you mentioned this in the last time we connected, you said, sometimes I can idealize it, and when I can't meet that ideal, like, it doesn't feel like it's worth it, right? Remember saying that?
Yep.
Yeah. So if we talked about first the annual getaway with Aaron, I heard those obstacles, her job, your schedules, the kids. Tell me what an ideal annual getaway with Aaron would look like. Paint the ideal for me.
Yeah, I mean, the ideal would be, place matters to an extent. We both love the beach. We both love the lake. I think it doesn't really matter. We've gone places before where there's not much to do and you're in nature, like you're a lake house, or you're at, a cabin, and, she's not really into camping or backpacking or any of that, but to go somewhere secluded is not bad. We both would enjoy just sitting on a porch and reading, and we could do that for 2-3 days. And that's great. We also enjoy, if we went somewhere like the beach, going out to eat or going to some shops, or just, something that's around an area like that. So, we're not very picky. it's nice to be somewhere that's beautiful scenery. Like some people come alive to go to something that's like a metropolis with a lot of city life. That we don't. We both really align in what we like, which is either, a secluded cabin, nature, quiet, or something like the beach that's pretty and you can have some seclusion, but there might be a little bit to do around. So yeah, I mean, that would be our ideal. I hate to fly.
Hmm.
Not opposed to it. You know that
Is that a
about me.
fear? Is that a fear thing?
Fear and sickness.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I just, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Flying is about the worst thing that I, yeah, it's probably about the worst thing that I could choose to do.
Ah,
Like I will avoid it. I mean, again, if we were going somewhere, I would totally do it. But I would rather drive 8 hours to the beach than fly 2 hours to the beach. If
yeah,
that makes sense.
sure.
And it's not wasted time. I enjoy talking with her in the car. I like to have a car when we're down there and I have to rent one. So like, so I mean the beach for us, you get past 8 hours, it's like, yeah, maybe we should fly. So I'm not against it. If we went like to South Florida or somewhere like that, we would totally entertain flying. But yeah, anyway, the barriers isn't necessarily what we're not necessarily picky. It's just yeah, do our schedules align? Uh because if they align work wise, there might be something going on in the home that just, so sometimes, so in some ways it's like putting that large rock in the jar first and letting the small ones fill in around it. For us, it's doing a large, putting that large rock on the calendar. So, yeah, I mean, we just need to be diligent to do that. And then if things are disrupted or whatever, we can flex around that. So, but yeah, it's more of just being proactive to do it. It ties a little bit in, not totally, because there are some low cost things we could do, but some of it ties into finances, which is one of the things on the wheel that was more of an impairment. We can unpack either this week or another time, but yeah, some of it's just we have a lot of. I was lamenting slash just talking with a friend about in this season of life we have so much responsibility
Mm,
at the height of it with a child in college, one about to be a senior, two hitting high school. So like we've got 4 teens, just the needs, and then you think about the responsibility of just your house
yeah,
and the lawn, and then you think about the needs of the church and not just on Sunday but weekly needs and then so I think Aaron and I, because we're both kind of servant oriented, serve others, probably a little bit more natural, like we have trouble prioritizing ourselves and taking care of ourselves, which doesn't make sense because we're like, you've got to keep the saw sharpened to bless others. But you don't want all those responsibilities to weigh down something that we would say is the largest rock in our world outside of Christ is each other. So but for whatever reason, it's almost like we think, well, we're good, so we can give over here, or we can take away from this because we're in a good place. But like, if you do that for years, you're not investing in each other. So I think it's denying some of our natural tendency to take care of other people and put
mm,
our oxygen mask on first before we put it on others. So I don't know. Love your advice. I think for some of us, it's just voicing that accountability to just, hey, someone, the elders, people in our lives that care about us saying, yeah, we need to see your calendar of these things would be helpful.
yeah, yeah. Well, I can appreciate the weight of responsibility of the age that we are with with kids. I totally hear you say that, and I can see that. But I also think, you like you just said, you kind of effectively solved it, if you will, because you said it's a large rock. It is the highest priority, beyond our walks with the Lord, and it is the thing that, and even the oxygen mask, right? It's the thing that allows you to keep doing well in your marriage and not let that be a distraction, and also honor it. So, I think you've got your head around all of that, and you're real clear on what it is that you guys need. I heard you say, beach or lake 2 to 3 days a year, being able to be somewhere beautiful that has nature, and that car time and the travel transportation. So, I mean, because I know you, I know that you have access to a lake house a couple hours away. And that the beach, may feel further, and I don't know if there's a spot that you can access or not. But yeah, so even as you think about, one of the things I always like to say, we're an all or nothing people at times, but we're still in 2023. The year's not over. What would it look like for you to drop that big rock in the jar now for some time before the year is over? How does that feel to you when I say that?
That was great. Yeah.
Not pressureful or
No. I mean, that was definitely something we talked about during our family vacation. And it may be soon. When we take our son to college. Last year we did that, and we spent a couple of days, in the mountains near his school. So we may combo that again. I don't know. But it's fun to dream about. I mean, I think that is great. Kind of a great mandate to say, hey, y'all figure out something between now and realistically, December, when the holidays start to hit. So our anniversary's in mid-October. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And we will do that. Okay.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, I mean, so, I don't know what feels comfortable to you, Brian, but I would say if you could give yourself a deadline to pick a date. So that's like the first big rock of this rock, right? The first is to put it on the calendar, because I know much of your life. And I know that means then asking, Nana and Pa to take care of your kids potentially, or their uncle and aunt, or and the dog, that you have to kind of shore those things up, but carve out the time together first would be great. And then decide on the location. If it's the lake house, then you can plan on that. And you're going, I think the thing that I would like to ask you is, what happens when something comes up and there's a schedule conflict, somebody has a track meet, or what will you do in that moment?
Well, yeah, usually it's not a concern if something comes up in the moment. Like if we're about to leave, or if we're somewhere, because I think we've got
more just that you'll put it on the calendar now. You don't know the whole fall schedule yet. What happens when something gets scheduled for that same day? What will you do?
I don't know that the barrier is as much as that, as the barrier is the mini crises, or just the wearing down that prevents that first rock of putting it on the calendar. It's not that I kind of feel like, I mean, okay, there could be something that's more financial, like, have a car issue that we've run into that recently, that could derail. But if it's on the calendar, I feel pretty good that it would happen. And if something, outside of someone just one of us getting sick, or whatever. So I don't worry as much about it once it's on the calendar. It's really the work to get it on the calendar.
Yeah.
And I think some of that is just the work. It's like, oh, well, we can do that tomorrow. So like the dailiness of sitting down to plan our week, to plan our month, you can kind of push that into where then it's close to the next month. So you're like, well, I'll just wait till next month. So, you do that for 2 or 3 weeks and put it off. And then you get to the next month, you're like, well, I'll just wait. So I think, and that's not necessarily, I mean, in some ways it's a form of procrastination, but it's really, yeah, I mean, some of it's like, just having to force yourself to sit down and have those meetings. So it's almost like even another rock to put on the calendar, to have the meeting, to plan the calendar. So to then put the big rock in the jar with the trip or whatever. So that's kind of what I'm learning is like the dailiness can just get disrupted. So yeah, it's like, yeah, we can sit down tonight and have a time to plan our calendar, and that gets disrupted for whatever reason. It's always a legitimate reason, but it's always yeah, that's just kind of life. So but it's not the life that we want. So
Do you guys currently do that? Have set time on a regular rhythm, or is it just kind of catch as catch can, or?
it's just it's not scheduled. In an ideal world, we talk about having a weekly sit down to look at our calendar. Sometimes we'll do it 2 weeks out. And then we try to do it in almost like a quarterly or semesterly way. So, we would sit down and talk about from now till the kids go back to school. So the next, and then we would also look at, all right, let's look at September and October, couple months out. It's harder to look past that for most things. Bigger stuff like a trip we would, but a lot of our energy went into our family vacation and student camp and those things we love. And those were big investments. And it's like pulling off those two things, which we started working on camp heavily in around January, February. So, it feels like for me, I can be drained from brain power for planning for the church or for something large group like that, or for our family, and that all that energy gets pulled to then it's like, well, I don't have the brain space to think about, something else right now. Let's do it next week. But next week's the same. So
it's like laundry, right? There's always another load.
Yeah. But again, it needs to happen.
Right.
But no, I mean, in an ideal world, it would be like, oh, we've got, Sunday afternoon, we sit and plan our calendar for the week or whatever that is. But we don't have a very good routine in life right now. Like, or at least I don't feel that. And in the school year we do, it's a little bit more formatted. Summer is not as it's not as formatted. It can, and some of that's fun, that's freeing, we look forward to some of that, but I think we can kind of get swept up in there's always something fun, always someone hanging out, there's always an event or something, and we can kind of skip the routine or the things that would help us, be able to enjoy those things more if we were more formatted in a couple of other things. So that's just work I need to do to lead us in that way. So
well, and
it's not her, it's my, it's me initiating that, or it's me, feeling overwhelmed to where, so.
Well, that's what coaches are for, right? We can partner together in some of that, so you don't feel alone in it. And I think, again, you have all the answers. You have, a great vision of what would be helpful, even this, routine planning time for you guys. And I think two things that are always going to compete is your idealism, right? That it has to be quiet, unbroken, set aside, all these things, which, as you already said, never will happen, or on the rare occasion. And also that, that things won't come in that have to shift that priority. And so the thing that I know we're going to get up against our time soon, but one of the things I really want to maybe have you think through, since you're a Gold Star student, for next time is, first of all, we already talked about what weekend could you do your getaway with Erin, but also in that maybe discuss all the alternate weekends, so that, because I know you don't necessarily have your fall calendar for your kids yet, and they come out and all of a sudden you'll realize they have a choir concert this day, and how are we possibly going to miss it? So what's your backup and your backup, right? What are those alternatives that would require some shifting still, but be A, B, and C options, so that you're not caught with A being not an option anymore and Noel, so that's one thing. And then even just this idea of your, I call it would be a date, right? That connecting time with Aaron, that biweekly thing you talked about. So in planning time, maybe it's something that you guys could give thought to about what typically would work best in the flow. Like as a pastor, you have a different schedule than a lot of other people, and Aaron's job. And it is hard to find it. I know my own husband and I have a hard time. And for us, it's Saturday nights, and we have just had to kind of like carve it out. And sometimes that's a long evening together. Sometimes it's, a quicker dinner, but really just trying to protect that. So maybe even thinking through and talking through. And again, I don't know what works for you. I actually sometimes will print off like a monthly and a weekly calendar, like de-identified, right? But to look at the rhythms, because that's the second thing. A lot of times I'll take clients through with the wheel of life is you've identified these things, these rhythms, these goals, but then you have to kind of be like, what's the frequency? My time with the Lord's a daily thing. My date with my wife is a weekly thing. And even as you get into that space with Aaron, if you decide, oh, this is a good weekly rhythm for our date, maybe the alternate weeks could be your planning times. So that's, and you just book it. And I know because you have a family, it often takes sitting down with the kids too and saying, hey, we're going to shift this up. This is a protected time. Like, what did my mom used to say? Unless you're bleeding or barfing, don't interrupt, but letting them see that you're protecting that too. And again, these are just different ideas, but I think that what I'd like to challenge you to do is, what can you do with that one big rock of the annual getaway with Aaron in the remaining of 2023? And then what rhythms to a planning meeting and to a date could you put on as big rocks too, but on that more consistent basis? How does that feel? Or does that seem like something you'd want to do?
Yeah, that sounds great.
So I think then, well, I guess, just looking back at my notes, one of the other things that I think you talked about monthly was the time away in nature. And so you've identified some of those. So that would be another thing to maybe as you're calendaring and scheduling, like you said, Nana's pool open, maybe that's your first stop. And so maybe pick a date, and I think we have a couple weeks left in July. Maybe pick a date, a half a day, whatever it looks like for you. And again, block that out on your calendar. And we'll have to tweak it. You'll have to try these things, but I think trying is, like you said, it's not the ideal maybe, but it's going to be helpful, I think, towards what your goals are. How's that feel?
Yeah, it feels great. I think one thing those are doable, and probably the most pressing, there's another couple things, but these are the most pressing things or things that my heart's excited about, wants to change and that feels, a little loose, and I need to rein in. And then you said something earlier about that I thought was really good, of kind of having an all or nothing mentality. And I think that's a struggle that, okay, well, let's say I sit down and we plan, and we may not get to, plan out everything perfectly for the next 2 months, but even if we planned out the next week or the next 3 weeks, like that's helpful. And if we didn't plan on anything, we've got time that we're sitting together. And if whatever we talk about that would prevent the plan, like that's still connection. And so it's, I think sometimes it's like, I have this all mentality of grand whiteboard, and we plan our whole year. And, so it's, which is funny, but I've planned, like I love to plan. I love to think futuristic. My problem is I don't love to implement it. So I might have all the answers. I have great ideas, but like it's the implementation is part of it. But I thought that really struck a chord, because I think that's where some things bog down, is it's not a 10 out of 10, or it's not, the ideal in my head, but let's leave some space for the Lord to use something that might be a 5 in my head, because it might be a 10 in his plan. So
Mm. And
that's,
even just
I
like,
appreciate.
yeah. So, like, even just like, again, you don't have to close your eyes if you don't want to, but even just envisioning, we're sitting here a year from now and you've put those big rocks in place. How does that feel to you? What things do you think would mark your life in a different way, internally and externally? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've experienced it before. I think some, it's kind of like these 2 iterations that happened over the past 4 years. That one was COVID. COVID really disrupted, a lot of that. You couldn't really make plans. You didn't know. And we did our best, and we were able to do some things. And so in some ways that disrupted, but we were still able to somewhat achieve all of those big rocks. It was hard to plan, but it still happened. The other piece was really the last 2 years of my former job were so tough emotionally. I was in a bad place with PTSD and just spiritually abusive place. And so, a lot of the stagnation, like I feel like I'm helping come out of that. And so these things are bubbling in my heart of like, yeah, that feels really good. I want to do that. And we've done that in the past, but it's I think now I'm starting to catch up health wise to want to see some of those things happen, which one of the things I was diagnosed with was hypoarousal, which I guess talking to my counselor very, very much mimics depression, but it's a little bit different in how it's treated. But it really is like, everything feels so blah. Like I would just have trouble thinking futuristically or kind of even getting through my day. And so it's one of those where, I thought I had depression, and there'd be days where like it was hard to get off the couch or whatever. And so but you don't realize it kind of happens a little bit of erosion over time to get there. But so that feels good because I feel like coming out of unhealthy season and wanting to put healthy practices into place. And so I'm encouraged because these are the type things that when you bring them up, that they're naturally on my heart to want to do. Like it's easy for me to envision planning things with Aaron like that because I want to, and we've done that before. And it's really good for us when we have stuff like that planned for our whole year, and we can pivot as we need, but just to have it in there and have it blocked out, just, is really helpful. So,
so you've seen it in action before, the fruit of what it looks like when you do that. And so, and I think I wasn't aware of that term, the hyper. I think that's really astute to say that too, because, when you live in seasons like that too, I typically find we're saying like, I ought, I should, I have to, rather than I want, I desire, I dream of, right? Like these.
I get to,
Yeah, I get to, that's right. And that's, I can see that life in you, and I like that would be a delight. And yeah, there's effort, there's some obstacles. It's not easy peasy because of the, life happens around us, but I can see that in you. And like, even as you're talking, like that you get excited about spending time with her and getting away and dreaming about those things. So, you have been in very dark places over the last, couple of years, but I just see so much light right now in you. So I just want to encourage you with that. And
yeah, I appreciate that. I do think really the past 4 years we're maybe not the past 4, not this past year. I think we've been getting a lot healthier, but the past 3 years before that, we were really in survival mode, crisis mode with seeing what all happened at our former church, and the mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, and then launching the new church, which was great, but felt kind of like crisis mode, because it was unplanned and I'd never done it before, really, at least in that way as the lead person. So I think Aaron and I were really close during that time, and close to Christ. I felt like he was really sweet to be close to us in that season, and I feel like we were tethered, Aaron and I, close together. But I look forward to being together, like enjoying life together. Like we were close as we were navigating
Mm,
crisis. And now I'm excited to like be close navigating just a healthy,
mm,
you know, um, so it's been there, that time has been there, but it's always been trying to, yeah, support each other in crisis. And now
mm.
and that we're thankful to do that. So yeah, it is exciting. It's something we experienced before, but just need to kind of get back into a rhythm of that.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited for you. So I think, so just to kind of reiterate, then maybe for next time, you can carve out, maybe plan A, B, C in terms of dates for your annual getaway with her. And maybe you'll even get into it further conversation wise and figure out some details, but even just getting those dates on the calendar, and then getting your monthly trial run on being in nature on the calendar, and then maybe talking with Aaron and seeing if there's something that's a weekly rhythm that would give you, or maybe not weekly, but my suggestion before was just that, maybe it's like every other week is a planning versus a date, and you'll figure out what's right for you guys. But getting that kind of carved out, and maybe even communicate to your family so you can protect it, and so that maybe next time we meet, we can share kind of if you're able to do any of those setting asides on your calendar. And then I kind of look forward to journeying with you and seeing the delight of what happens, because I think it'll bring you guys a lot of life. So that's exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited. This is, and it's helpful to be able to sit and process this out loud, because again, it's in my head. Oh, I need to do that, or oh, this is important. But then to sit in a coaching session to talk through it, it just kind of reinforces it, that it goes from an idea to action, just being able to talk about it, for 30 minutes. So
You pretty much just defined what coaching's supposed to be. So, we think we're supposed to tough it out on our own out there and figure it out. And that we even feel silly sometimes because we think I have the answers, I'm just not doing it, but we need partnership. So, I'm really thankful that I get to partner with you for this season, and look forward to meeting again. And I'll send some times for us.
yep.
As we close, is there anything specific though, that I can pray for you for between now and the next time we meet?
Um, yeah, I would just say um, diligence to implement this. Like I could check the boxes and complete the homework, but like the diligence to do it. Again, this isn't an all or nothing mentality or whatever idealism, but just the diligence to do it, to not just check a box for homework, but to do it because I care about Aaron. I care about the health of our family, our kids, and the being able to get to do some of these things, put these big rocks in place for us. So I need to lead better in that. So yeah, just the diligence to lead well would be good.
I would definitely love to pray for you in that. Okay, well, thank you. It's been such a joy to hear your heart and to see what God's doing, and to hear how he's encouraging you and leading you. And so I look forward to connecting again next time too.
Sounds great. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Bye.